welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Is China building a secret military base in the Maldives? We are not the ones asking that question. This is an allegation being made by some of the most powerful voices in the Maldives, by leaders who are known to be responsible and could be in government after the next elections. We bring you a story which is likely to have major implications for the security and power politics of South Asia and the Indo-Pacific. On the 28th of March, a memorandum of understanding was signed between China and the Maldives. Now, this MOU allowed China's harbour engineering company to carry out a project in the Maldives. What kind of project, you ask? China claims it is developing an agricultural economic zone in the Maldives. And for that, China will first reclaim land, then the agricultural project will start. This is the island where all of this is happening. It is called Uthuru Thila Falhu. This island is part of the atoll that is the closest to India. What are the chances China is secretly building an outpost here? And who can guarantee that the Chinese engineers working here are not actually PLA commanders? Can the Maldivian president, Mohamed Moizu, guarantee that is the question. I doubt it. The Maldives' own opposition is skeptical. The chairperson of the MDP, the Maldivian Democratic Party, in fact, has said, and I'm quoting here, China's intentions are not rooted in agriculture. Near the designated area lies the MNDF, Maldives National Defence Force Harbour. They are positioning themselves strategically in front of the MNDF harbour, originating from a distant and powerful nation to undertake military operations, quote unquote. The Chinese company working on the island is called the China Harbour Engineering. It happens to be the same company, in fact, that developed the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka. You know, the port that China eventually used to debt trap Sri Lanka. This Chinese company also allegedly has direct links to the PLA. It regularly carries out military projects. Reports say the China Harbour Engineering functions under a special commission, one that reports directly to the State Council. In fact, Bangladesh has banned this company. You know why? Because it was caught trying to bribe a senior government official. You heard that right. This Chinese company has reportedly carried out land reclamation projects in the South China Sea as well. The islands it created went on to be used by the PLA for military purposes. So is it just a coincidence that the same company has now landed in the Maldives? Beijing could very well have asked China Harbour Engineering to follow the South China Sea template in the Maldives. You know, reclaim land first and then make it suitable for militarization. This Chinese company is the perfect smokescreen for a covert PLA operation. Just tell me one thing. Is it also just a coincidence that Uthuru Thila Falhu was chosen for this project? Do you know how many islands the Maldives has? 1,190. 164 of these islands have been developed as tourist resorts. The locals live in 200 islands. How many left? Over 800. All of these are uninhabited. Some of them, in fact, are used for agriculture or other purposes, but most have little to no human activity. So are you telling me that of the remaining 800 uninhabited islands spread over 90,000 square kilometers, China found Uthuru Thila Falhu the most suitable for an agricultural economic zone? For starters, there isn't even enough land here. The Chinese are trying to reclaim at least 200 hectares. Why go through all that trouble when you can simply pick another island? This atoll is not even positioned centrally, transporting agricultural produce from here to, say, the Ado city in the south will be quite a chore. The opposition, in fact, is pointing out that Lamu atoll already has the land for such an agricultural project. What's more, it's also more suitable for agricultural activities. So why didn't China choose Lamu? Because it's not close enough to India. China, you see, does not care about the Maldives' food security or self-sufficiency. It has other priorities like militarization, expansionism, challenging India, and Uthuru Thila Falhu fits perfectly into China's plan. Just look at how close it is to Minicoy. This is the perfect island for a Chinese military outpost. Is that what China is building here, is the question. In 2017, China opened its first outpost in the Indian Ocean. It was in Djibouti, the Horn of Africa. In 2022, the Chinese began talks with the Comoros. As I speak, there is Chinese-linked activity in Myanmar's Coco Island. China also has some degree of influence in Kenya's Mombasa port. It has 49% ownership of the Sudan port. It controls Sri Lanka's Hambantota. Of course, Pakistan's Gwadar port. China has also leased Australia's Darwin port. It has a degree of influence in Bangladesh's Chittagong port. Is Uthuru Thila Falhu next? Also, does Moizu not see this? Is he blinded by greed, or has Moizu been ordered by the Chinese to look the other way? In 2023, India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh and his then Maldivian counterpart, Maria Didi, had laid the foundation stone for the Coast Guard Ekatha Harbour at Sifavaru, at this same atoll, Uthuru Thila Falhu. The project was supposed to strengthen the capacity of the Maldivian Coast Guard, enable the Maldives to maintain and repair its naval vessel, make the archipelago more self-sufficient. Also facilitate humanitarian assistance and disaster relief efforts. Uthuru Thila Falhu was supposed to host a modern military base for the Maldives. But now the Chinese, in fact, have over the UTF. Beijing has sold a lie of farming in this island, of producing enough crops for at least 200,000 people. And Moizu is dancing to Chinese tunes, covering up for the covert Chinese operation by pointing at India. On Tuesday, the opposition raised concern about what was happening in the Uthuru Thila Falhu. The very next day, Moizu came out with a statement. He did not say a word about China or the Chinese project. You know what he did instead? He said the remaining Indian troops stationed in the Maldives will leave, quote-unquote, within the current month. You see, the signs have been there for a while now. Moizu had a very public anti-India campaign. He broke long-established diplomatic traditions. He chose China, not India, for his first official international visit. The Maldives then signed a secret defense deal with China. In January, Moizu allowed Chinese spy ship to dock in Mali. The MDP chairman believes that the spy ship had been mapping underwater terrain over the past few months after entering the Maldivian territorial water. Such data, like underwater seabed, water salinity, they are intel gold mines for submarine operations. Every step of this way, we have been telling you that Moizu is letting China take control of its waters. He is facilitating a Chinese takeover of the Maldives, enabling it. Moizu does not mind if the Maldives' sovereignty is crushed, if Maldivian interests are compromised. His eyes are on the Chinese checkbook, and China's are on India, and India's expanding role in the Indian Ocean. How else do you explain the timing of all of this? A military deal between China and the Maldives is signed days before India commissions INS Jatayu in Minicoy. This Indian naval base is all of 450 kilometers from Mali. Before the month ends, we have reports of suspicious Chinese activity in the Maldives' atoll closest to Minicoy. Everyone can see what's happening. It's crystal clear, much like the waters of the Maldives that the Chinese now rule. A few weeks ago, we asked you a question. Is Ukraine losing the war against Russia? And today, I ask that question again. You see, Ukraine's front line is collapsing. Just this year, the war-torn country has lost over 400 square kilometers to the invading Russian forces. Well, 403 square kilometers to be precise. This figure has been given by the Russian defense minister. During a briefing with Russian military chiefs, Shoigu boasted that his forces have to capture this much territory since the starting of this year. If he is right, it would mean Ukraine has lost 403 square kilometers of its territory in just a span of 3 months. President Vladimir Putin's forces claim to have secured their first territorial gains in almost a year in recent months. This even as Ukraine continues to be both outnumbered and outgunned on the battlefield. Delays in the inflow of Western aid, which are vital to fend off Russian forces, have seriously jeopardized Ukraine's prospects on the battlefield. Russian forces have been able to take advantage of this. Since the fall of the frontline town of Avdiivka, Russian forces have continuously advanced into Russian territory. It was the most significant territorial advance for Russia since May last year. Just have a look at the map of Ukraine. The portions in red, that's all Ukrainian land, now under Russian control. The Russian defense minister briefed the military chiefs that the forces continue to push Ukrainian units westwards. Shoigu says that the Russian forces have captured 5 more settlements, 4 in Donetsk, 1 in Zaporizhia, in just the span of 1 month. Now, make no mistake here, Ukraine's situation on the front line is extremely dire. But the situation in the settlements further away from the border also have been affected with daily drone missile attacks. In the latest, a Russian drone attack struck residential buildings in Kharkiv and an energy facility in the surrounding region. As a result, 4 people died. 350,000 residents were left without electricity. Ukraine's second largest city, which lies some 30 kilometers from the Russian border, has been pounded by strikes. Russia has renewed its missile and drone attacks on Ukraine's energy system. In the Dnipropetrovsk region, Russian forces also hit a solar power plant. Russia, of course, denies deliberately targeting civilians, but the focus has been on capturing eastern and southern parts of Ukraine. According to the American think tank ISW, or the Institute for the Study of War, Russia controls more than 100,000 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory. That's almost a fifth of Ukraine, by the way. In its daily assessment update, ISW says that Russian forces appear to have increased the number and the size of mechanized ground assaults on the front line. And this is just in the past 2 weeks. ISW assesses that the Russians may be intensifying the overall tempo of their offensive operations in Ukraine. In fact, ISW also confirmed that Russian forces have made advances near Bakhmut, Donetsk city, and in Donetsk-Zaporizhia border area. In the last few days, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has also made dire warnings. He says that unless the stalled multi-billion-dollar package from the US is approved soon, his forces will have to, quote-unquote, go back, retreat step by step in small steps. Zelensky also warned that some major cities could be at the risk of falling. Obviously, Zelensky's statement is part of a broader effort to free up the military aid his forces so desperately need. But the sad truth is that even if the aid package is approved by the US Congress, a massive resupply of weapons may not be enough to prevent a major battlefield upset. Meanwhile, Russia is reportedly working on an offensive that's expected to launch this summer. Ukrainian forces worry that whenever and wherever Russia decides to focus its offensive, more frontline cities will fall to Russia. After all, Russia has a much greater weight in numbers. They also have guided aerial bombs that they have started using more frequently now on Ukrainian positions. Ukraine worries that their adversary will be able to penetrate the front line and crash it. Reports cite top Ukrainian officials as saying that neither Ukraine nor its Western partners have the technology to actually match up to Russia's offensive whenever it takes place. And as far as manpower is concerned, Ukraine is also struggling to beef up its military. And while Ukraine is struggling, more and more people in Russia are enlisting to join the military. In a nutshell, all odds seem to be stacked against Ukraine. The question is, can the West still save Ukraine, win the war? We will have to wait and watch. Let me now tell you a bit more about what's lined up for you on the show tonight. Will the US remove the Houthis from its terror list? Reports are hinting at a possibility. What explains this big move amid the war at sea? Is it a confused military strategy of America's admission of failure at the Red Sea? Also on the show, we tell you about lavender, how Israel is using artificial intelligence in its war on Gaza. Now, what happens if AI goes rogue? America claims to be coming up with a technology to save the world from rogue AI. You know, such a situation arrives in the future, but who will save the world from America's present tech disasters is the question. That story is coming up in just a few minutes. Also, Pakistan has run out of money to pay its educators. All the details coming up in just a bit. We now get you the story of a man who was once regarded a superstar in the edtech world. But things have drastically changed, and how? I am talking about Byju Ravindran. It's been a rapid fall after a meteoric rise for him and his edtech startup Byju's. It was once considered an icon in the Indian edtech space, the poster child of the startup world. In fact, in the year 2022, it reached a valuation of $22 billion. During the pandemic, its popularity skyrocketed. But over the last year, the popularity has plummeted. And as for Byju Ravindran, someone whose rags to riches story became the talk of the town, now the story of a rapid decline in his net worth is dominating headlines. Let me show you these numbers first. A year ago, Byju Ravindran's net worth was 17,545 crore rupees. That's $2.1 billion. In fact, he was a part of some lists of the world's richest people. You know what his net worth is now? Zero. That's as per the Forbes Billionaire Index 2024. You know what Forbes has said? Only 4 people from last year's list dropped off this time, including former edtech star Byju Ravindran, whose firm Byju's was enveloped in a multiple crises and its valuation was marked down by BlackRock to $1 billion, a fraction of its peak $22 billion valuation in 2022. The story began in 2011. That's when Byju Ravindran founded Think and Learn Private Limited. That's the parent company of Byju's. By now, most of you would have heard of Byju's. It became a household name over the years, in fact. The services ranging from online tutorials to offline coaching. Ravindran comes from a family of teachers. He was born in the southern Indian state of Kerala. And after completing his schooling at a Malayalam medium school, he pursued a Bachelor of Technology degree from the Government College of Engineering, Kannur. He had a keen interest in teaching. He was a private math tutor before he started his company, and it was quite a glorious start for Byju's. the learning app, in 2015. The flagship product of the company, it was claimed it witnessed 2 million downloads within 3 months of the rollout. But cut to 2024, the company has been laying off people, salaries have been delayed. It also has been tackling delayed financial results. There have been a series of board member departures. And this is just a sample of the mounting woes. The list of troubles is long, and Byju Ravindran has been in the middle of a full-blown crisis. Byju's reported 45.6 billion rupees, that's $573 million in losses after several months of delay in reporting its fiscal 2021 results. It reported a substantial net loss exceeding $1 billion for the fiscal year ending March 2022. His wife, Divya, who helps him run the company, was one of his early students. And there was a time when Byju's success story was talked about with hope and pride. In fact, it was said that they did not start this as a business, but a passion that ended up becoming a business. Byju Ravindran reportedly pledged his under-construction villa and his family members' homes earlier to pay salaries to employees. Reports say 2 homes owned by Ravindran's family in Bengaluru and his under-construction villa were offered as collateral to borrow 100 crore rupees. He has gone from leading a $22 billion empire to reaching this point. From being a billionaire hero to cash zero. It's been quite a fall. Where does it even go from here for him and his company? Is the US removing the Houthis from its terror list? Tim Lender King, who is America's special envoy to Yemen, recently said that his country, the US, quote-unquote, would certainly study removing the Houthis from the list of designated terror organizations. Last we checked, the Houthis had not stopped attacking ships in the Bab el-Mandeb and the Red Sea. So just what happened there? What explains this American envoy's comment? Is it a peace offering or is it an admission of defeat? Let's just go back to the 17th of January 2024. The US State Department put out a press statement that day. Let me just read out what it said. The Department of State today is announcing the designation of Ansarullah, commonly referred to as the Houthis, as a specially designated global terrorist group. This designation seeks to promote accountability for the group's terrorist activities. If the Houthis cease their attacks in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, the United States will re-evaluate this designation. Have the Houthis ceased their activities in the Red Sea? We haven't heard anything to that effect. In fact, the Houthis minced no words when they said that they will continue to fight alongside the Hamas as long as the war continues. Thinking the Houthis' terror designation. Did the American Red Sea strategy fail? Just tell me one thing. How do countries approach conflicts? First, through diplomacy. They try to resolve conflicts, through talks. They negotiate, engage in give and take perhaps. And then only if diplomacy fails, they send troops after exhausting all options. America, it seems, pulled a reverse. In October, Hamas attacked Israel. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared a war. The Israeli Defense Forces went into Gaza. From Yemen, the Houthis started a parallel war at sea. They began launching missiles, targeting ships. The Houthis left the world rubbing their eyes when they used a chopper to hijack a commercial vessel and filmed the entire operation. This happened in November 2023. America responded to the Houthi escalation by calling on its allies to form a naval alliance. Operation Prosperity Guardian was born. A force was put together with the goal to ensure safe transit through the Red Sea region. What happened then? This alliance could neither deter Houthi attacks nor limit their impact. The Houthis continued attacking ships, even attacked the American Navy. So what did America do next? Along with the UK, it struck Houthi targets in Yemen. Multiple strikes were carried out. The US and the UK claimed that they destroyed rockets, launchers, radar, and vast weapon depot. It may to an extent have dented Houthi capabilities, but it definitely did not deter the fighters. The Houthis continued launching ballistic missiles, suicide drones, even remotely controlled suicide boats to target the Western forces. The US then claimed it intercepted a Yemen-bound boat carrying Iran-made weapons. But to what end? The Houthi strikes did not stop. But 2 American commandos involved in that operation mysteriously went missing. The Houthis claim so far they have lost over 30 fighters. But have they lost the war at sea is the question. The Houthi leaders say they will attack more ships. So why is an American diplomat here hinting at possibly removing the Houthis from the terror list remains the big question. Is this a confused military strategy or a failed one? America tried to use its firepower to rein in the Houthis from issuing threats to launching airstrikes. Washington tried it all. But nothing has yielded results. So it is going back to the drawing board, it seems. Washington could be trying a different approach altogether. Diplomacy. America's special envoy to Yemen said, and I'm quoting here, "My hope is that we can find diplomatic off-ramps." But does America really have the luxury of options? Our next story is about Pakistan's problem province, that's Balochistan. It is facing a severe crisis, a severe education crisis, to be precise. The country has no money to pay educators in Balochistan. Universities here are on the verge of financial collapse. Unpaid for over 3 months, teachers have hit the streets demanding their rights. But is anyone in the Pakistani establishment even listening? Here's a detailed report.
Pakistan's poorest province is facing a severe education crisis. Balochistan's universities are financially crippled and on the verge of collapsing. Such is the state of affairs that teachers and employees have not been paid their salary in 3 months. Last month, they took to the streets, setting up camps outside the University of Balochistan, demanding salaries and pensions. Their protests coincided with the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. Professors had to resort to this extreme measure because neither the provincial government nor the federal government has paid attention to their demands. Even the Higher Education Commission has not taken the matter seriously. The matter has now reached the Parliament of Pakistan. Recently, Pakistan People's Party leader Zahur Buledi, who was also the former finance minister of Balochistan, raised the issue in the parliament. Buledi said more teachers have been employed at universities in Balochistan than is required, adding, as a result of over-recruitment, a major part of the university's earnings are going in the payment of salaries. Buledi advised there is a need to empower the internal planning and finance committees and find ways to make the universities self-sufficient. According to reports, Balochistan Assembly Speaker has formed a 5-member committee to address the demands of the protesters. This committee has even held meetings with the teachers group. It promised to disburse the salaries soon, but payments have still apparently not come. Now, the teachers have threatened to hold protests once again until their demand is met. Balochistan has also long struggled with infrastructure issues, particularly in the education sector. Thousands of students are being denied their right to education due to prolonged administrative negligence and mismanagement. The universities may be facing overemployment of teachers, but in the schools of the region, the story is completely different. According to Pakistani media reports, 3,500 schools of Balochistan are closed because of a shortage of teachers. Approximately 800,000 school-age students are sitting idle at home. Despite being one of the largest provinces of Pakistan, Balochistan is still the most underdeveloped and underrepresented. State repression has fueled anti-Pakistan sentiments and insurgency in this region, which has gone on to become a constant source of headache for the Pakistani establishment. It begs the question, will the newly formed Pakistani government under Shehbaz Sharif save this restive region from implosion?
Intelligence sources have made some fresh revelations. Israel has been using artificial intelligence in its war. What for exactly? Well, to put together a database of potential targets. And based on what, you ask? Their apparent links to Hamas militants. In fact, this powerful AI system is called Lavender, and it was developed by the Israel Defense Forces Elite Intelligence Division, Unit 8200. At one stage, it was identifying as many as 37,000 targets, roughly spending 20 seconds on each one. Less than a minute to assess if a person is linked to Hamas. Israeli officers say the system had been really efficient and that they could count on its statistical mechanism. In fact, some claim they added zero value to the attacks. They simply worked as a stamp of approval, and the AI system did the dirty job. And just like that, they ended thousands of people. How efficient, right? But what about accuracy? Was every single target that came under attack associated with Hamas? Not really. And I am not the one saying that. According to reports, Israeli intelligence sources themselves have admitted this. They claim Israeli military officials permitted large numbers of Palestinian civilians to be killed, particularly during the early months of the conflict. In fact, before launching an attack, they had an estimated number of civilians who could be killed, meaning they were fully aware of the innocent lives they were going to take. Two sources reportedly said that during the early weeks of the war, they were permitted to kill 15 or 20 civilians during airstrikes on low-ranking Hamas militants. For a top-ranking Hamas official, they were allegedly permitted to kill more than 100 civilians in a single attack. Permitted? These are civilian lives we are talking about. Attacks on such targets were typically carried out using unguided munitions known as dump bombs. These bombs basically would destroy entire homes and kill all their occupants. This perfectly explains the shockingly high death toll in the war, perhaps. And what does the IDF have to say? It is denying any wrongdoing. In response to the investigation, it has clarified that the operations were carried out in accordance with the rules of proportionality under international law. But do 33,000 civilian deaths to some 10,000 Hamas militants sound anywhere near proportional? And even the said Hamas death toll is up for debate. According to the IDF, Lavender is just a database to cross-reference intelligence sources, and that it does not churn out a list of confirmed military operatives who can be attacked. So why are its officials claiming otherwise then? In earlier Israeli military operations, producing human targets was often a more labor-intensive process. Multiple sources have said the decision to incriminate an individual or identify them as a target was discussed and then signed off by a legal advisor. But all these procedures merely became formalities, it seems, when the war broke out. The IDF allegedly approved its sweeping use as a target recommendation tool. It soon created a database of tens of thousands of individuals marked as low-ranking members of Hamas's military wing. But Lavender is not the only AI system at work. It was used alongside another AI-based decision support system called the Gospel. It also recommended targets, by the way, but in the form of buildings and structures rather than individuals. You see, the mounting death toll in Gaza had raised a very important question. How is such a Western military as Israel, with such advanced capabilities, with weapons that can conduct highly surgical strikes, killing so many civilians, claiming so many innocents, children, women, elderly, everyone? Was it because AI was involved, or was it because, as the intel officers allege, a calculated decision? In fact, Israel is already facing fire over its recent attacks on aid workers of the world's central kitchen. In defense, Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that the deaths were unintentional and that it was just a mistake. How convenient, right? How are Israeli precision systems making so many mistakes? Can the world's startup nation, which is renowned for its top-class tech, afford to make such so-called mistakes? But what happens if artificial intelligence goes rogue? What if AI starts acting in ways not aligned with humanity? What happens if human beings lose control of AI? AI skeptics argue it could happen, and this fear of AI going rogue seems to have gripped the US as well. In fact, the Pentagon is reportedly working on technology that could potentially prevent AI from killing machines, from turning rogue. You heard that right. Reports say that the Pentagon is working to address vulnerabilities in its own AI systems so that it is not exploited by attackers. A research program of the Pentagon called the Guaranteeing AI Robustness Against Deception has apparently been investigating so-called adversarial attacks since 2022. Researchers have shown how seemingly harmless patterns can fool AI into misidentifying objects, potentially leading to disastrous consequences on the battlefield. For example, an AI system could mistake a bus with passengers for a tank if it were tagged with the right visual noise. Now you must be wondering, will humans lose control of AI? It's hard to tell, but it's a concern regardless, a serious one. You see, the Pentagon is working to save the world from rogue AI only because it is building autonomous weapons. What are autonomous weapons, you ask? They are essentially weapons that use AI to identify, target, and kill without any human intervention. Naturally, since the development of such weapons has already started, there is a lot of public anxiety around it. What happens if these killer robots start targeting innocents? These are legal as well as ethical concerns around this. And to address this, America's Department of Defense has recently updated its AI development rules. Now it has put emphasis on responsible behavior. It requires approval for all deployed systems. According to reports, the Pentagon's GARD program has made progress in developing defenses against such attacks. However, some advocacy groups remain concerned. They worry that AI-powered weapons could misinterpret situations and attack without cause. What if enemy nations or bad actors deliberately manipulate these systems? They argue that such weapons could lead to unintended escalations, especially in tense, conflict-prone regions. But we have a more pertinent question here. While there are ethical questions, can America really save the world if AI goes rogue? I mean, just have a look at America's present tech disasters. Boeing, an American icon, has been grounded over tech failures. Unending software problems continue to impact Tesla's Cybertruck. What's more, the US is also considering researching solar radiation modification called sun blocking to cool planet Earth. Question is, isn't the US one of the biggest contributors as far as global warming is concerned? The point I'm trying to make is this. America working on technology to stop rogue AI sounds good, but the irony here is that it is raising the possibility of AI going rogue by building autonomous weapons. And this is especially at a time when American technology is under scrutiny for its reliability issues, which raises doubts about the feasibility of such a project itself. Can America really address these internal tech failures while tackling the challenge of preventing rogue killing machines? Critics argue that this is America's savior complex talking. We have seen it in movies so many times, in fact. America is always portrayed as the good guys, saving the world from disasters, alien invasions, monsters, killer robots. It's self-promotion. It positions America as the guardian of the world. In the real world, though, this so-called guardian of the world is grappling with tech shortcomings. And it begs the question, what measures can be implemented now to ensure transparency and accountability in the Pentagon's initiative to prevent rogue killing machines? Is it time that countries work together to mitigate risks associated with autonomous weapons? Our next story is particularly for students who are about to finish their schooling, step out into the real world and pick their career paths. If you are one or the parent of one, listen up. Have you signed up to the idea of cracking a competitive exam and being sorted for the rest of your life? Is landing a seat in an Indian Institute of Technology your big plan? Well, why not? It is not only India's leading engineering college, but one of the best in the entire world. Once you clear your mains and advanced exams, well-paying jobs should be lined up for you. Once you graduate, the only struggle you're supposed to face is choosing which one to pick. Yes, that used to be the case. Not anymore, it seems. Is the IIT fever over? Are recruiters done with all its hype? I asked that question because of what's happening in IIT Bombay. This year, 2,000 students registered for placements. 712 of them are yet to secure jobs. A staggering 36% of IIT Bombay students are still jobless. What's the explanation? Last year, around this time, the figure was close to 33%. And this shows the problem is worsening year after year. An official from IIT Bombay's placement cell said it was a struggle, yes, a struggle to invite companies to the campus compared to last year. They say it is due to the global economic meltdown. Most companies, in fact, are apparently unable to accept salary packages decided by the institute. It is taking multiple rounds of negotiations to get these firms to come over and offer jobs. The salary packages that used to go well over 1 crore rupees a year have now reportedly dipped to 3 to 4 lakh rupees per annum. That's what the founder of Global IIT Alumni Support Group, Dheeraj Singh, told ANI. A large chunk of the 380 companies that came to shop for talent have been from India itself, unlike the usual trend where international players outnumber the domestic companies. Every year, students from the computer science and engineering branch are the most in demand. But for the first time ever, they have not seen 100% placement. Despite an apparent decline in demand for IIT Bombay engineers, the institute's placement cell went ahead and announced that 85 of the graduates have been offered a pay package over 1 crore rupees. Yes, 85. This announcement was made back in December at the end of the phase 1 of the placements. But later on, the cell admitted that it has made an error and only 22 students had been offered the said salary. From 85 to 22, that's a pretty big margin of error. Now, forget about being paid in crores. 1/3 of the students are scrambling for offer letters. Stress levels are through the roof. In fact, reports say some students from private colleges are being offered the same money as IIT graduates for similar positions. So then what is the point of cracking one of the toughest competitive examinations and surviving 4 years in an IIT then? If at the end of it, you would perhaps get the same job a private college would have landed you. Also, is there a trend here? That's the big question as well. Is this decline in IIT placements going to continue in the coming years? Is the IIT hype officially over? And if not now, will it be soon? How do you future-proof your career then, if IITs are not the solution anymore? On that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight. This is me, Molly Kampir, signing off. Thanks very much for watching.